Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel, and thank you for watching this if you do. And this video is not going to be one of my reviews. I will be posting reviews probably once or twice a month on my channel here on Glitter Bunny. I do upload vlogs and just life updates and reviews and just makeup, lots of different things. And this is for just really, I record this video for me, so I can go back in the future and look at my experience, and also for family and other people who keep up with me and my medical journey, and for people who may be going through the same thing or about to. So if this is something you're interested in, please keep watching. So I like to record when I'm fresh, so to say, out of the situation. So, you know, I'm not all done up and fancy, and I don't know if I'm going to choose to edit this video. A lot of times I just like to record it and upload it, just the raw, straight truth of, you know, just me talking about what happened. So, I'm going to start from the beginning. If you have watched my channel or know me personally by now, you may know that I have a brain condition. This brain condition is called IIH, which stands for Idiopathic Intracranial Hypertension. A lot of times when people hear hypertension, they think that that means like blood pressure. It does not mean blood pressure. It does mean pressure, but the pressure is more referring to amount of fluid. So over the last year that I have had this diagnosis, I have had an amazing group of people who have the same exact condition as I do, and I have found a great support group. I've had lots of different doctors educate me. I feel like I'm always going to learn something about this condition, but I feel like I understand it so much more now, especially after my most recent experience, which is why I'm making this video. So, with my experience with idiopathic intracranial hypertension, what that means is that our brain thinks that we have a fake tumor. And so it floods our brain with cervical spinal fluid to flush out and try to wash out this tumor. However, because there's not a tumor in our brain, we just keep overproducing fluid, the fluid around our brain. So when you overproduce fluid, you're having too much fluid, which causes pressure, which then can put pressure or start to leak out, depending on how high it is. Out of your nose, out of your ears. It puts pressure on your optical nerves, which is the biggest risk of this brain condition. It's not fatal, so I'm probably not going to die from this condition, but I may have vision loss or go blind, if not under control eventually. So I've dealt with migraines since I was 19 years old. I'm now 29, so that's 10 years. When I first started getting headaches and migraines, I don't believe I was ever on like any designated migraine medicine as far as I can remember. I just remember going to a primary doctor and them giving me like shots of medicine in the arm, like an injection of pain medicine that would help for a couple days or a week or so. And I've always took Tylenol or ibuprofen or Myadol, just constantly all the time for years. Just was always on some type of over-the-counter medication. And I remember like having light sensitivity, sound sensitivity. I remember when I met my husband, when we were dating prior to marriage, like we've been together 8 years, so 7-8 years ago, I'd go and see him and we'd be sitting in his bedroom and I'd ask for his remote to his TV and we would just be hitting me on my head from the amount of like migraine and pressure and just everything I had on my head. And it's always normally around like this area, especially around above my eyebrows. And then it's just the top of my head mostly, and then the sides. But mostly it's up here. And so I always thought, to be honest, I thought everybody had headaches all the time. And my husband, once we got married and he kept seeing how regularly I had migraines, he was like, I don't think this is normal. And you know, I have fibromyalgia, and fibromyalgia can, if you flare a lot and it's not controlled and you're very stressed or you eat certain things, you know, it can flare up and you can get migraines. So I just always assumed it was fibromyalgia, you know. So I ended up having to go to an ENT doctor, which is ear, nose, throat, for a separate issue. And while I was there, I mentioned to him, I was like, yeah, because, you know, I've had a lot of ear surgeries. I'm going to try not to go all into, like, all my medical history, but in this video, because I'd like to keep it separate because I know it can be a lot. But I've had a lot of ear surgeries and ear problems, like, my whole life. So I go there and I'm just telling them, you know, yeah, I get a lot of headaches, and maybe it's because my ears, because I have a lot of ear infections. Well, I haven't lately, thank God, now that I'm on year-round allergy medicine. And anyway, so he goes, I don't think these headaches are from your ear issues. So he said, I would really like for you to see a neurologist since you're having like 10 years worth of migraines and headaches. I'm like, okay. He's like, it may be this condition called IIH. That's the first time I heard about it. And I'm like, and I look it up and it's like brain condition. And I'm like, ain't nothing wrong with my brain. Like, yeah, I'm a little crazy and whatever. I have migraines, but I don't have anything wrong with my brain. So this all happened last year in 2020, like March, April. And it was just the start of like the pandemic. I was like, I don't really want to go to a neurologist or any doctors or leave my house during a pandemic. But then I started getting swelling in the back of my head. And that kind of concerned me. And I was like, well, I already have a referral to a neurologist. So why don't I just go ahead and make the appointment? And so I called and they got me in almost immediately. Like, I think it was the next day or a couple days later. And we found out I have this condition called optical neuralgia, I believe is how you say it. Which means that my nerves back here on the back of my head swell, which also seems like a lot of people who have IIH also have optical neuralgia. So I just get pain trigger injections, which help with the headache and migraines that go from the bottom of my neck up to the side of my head. You can look it up and it has good pictures online showing like where these nerves run. And while I was there, I told him, you know, the ENT doctor thinks I have this brain condition, possibly, I don't even know how he came to that conclusion, called IIH. And they're like, well, let's just get you tested just to make sure. And I'm like, okay. So I go and I get an MRI. I get an eye test with the ophthalmologist, who is kind of like an eye doctor, but they do more extensive testing. And then I ended up getting a lumbar puncture. So lumbar puncture is, it's where they take a needle and they go in your back, your lower back, into your spine and drain your cervical spinal fluid. And they do it for a couple reasons. You can check to see if you have MS, or, you know, there's other things. Again, I'm still learning all this and it's a lot. But they can check the pressure to see how high your pressure is. And at that time, my pressure was 28. And normal head pressure, or opening pressure is how it's technically called, for spinal cervical fluid, is around 17 or 18. Sorry, my husband's texting me. I'm just reading the message. So 17, 18, you want it under 20. So it was a little elevated, and then my MRI came back that they could see that there is pressure around my brain. So I got the diagnosis in May or June, I believe it was, of 2020, that I have IIH. And it was hard to hear because I was told if you don't take medicine and take this serious, you could go blind one day. I currently do not have papedema, I think it's called, or a lot of people abbreviate it to PAPS, which is good. So I don't have currently any vision issues and haven't. I do have blurry vision and sometimes it blacks out, but it's not actively like that. Just during specific times of like high pressure. So anyways, that lumbar puncture I had in May 2020 was under fluoroscope or ultrasound and was supposed to be guided. Like, they didn't just go in there blindly, but it was rough. They, like, hit my nerves all the way in. My legs were jumping. It was shooting pain all the way up my body, like, and down my body. It was terrible. And I stayed still, and I didn't think it was gonna hurt, but I felt it all. It was extremely rough. The recovery was really rough. For like a week, I hurt so bad because, like I said, I have fibromyalgia, so anytime something traumatic happens to my body, it flares up my fibromyalgia. And it was just really rough. Which hang with me with this information, especially if you have IIH, because I'm about to tell you my most recent lumbar puncture experience, which was 2 days ago, was so much better, and I'm gonna go all into the details about that and what they did, and what I highly suggest you ask your neurologist to do the lumbar puncture by. So just hang tight. I just think it's really important to have the history and to know what I've been through and what I know and, have done. So it came back 28. They started me on a medicine called Diamox. They wanted to start me on a medicine called Topamax. But Topamax, I read up on, is very harsh to your body. And a lot of people have tons of side effects, which all medicines have side effects, but these seemed way more severe than I was comfortable with, especially with my goal of wanting to have a child one day naturally. Not naturally as in giving birth, but like getting pregnant naturally. And I don't want to be on any hard medicines that are going to have tons of side effects if I try to go off of them, or even just have really harsh side effects while on them. My purpose and goal in life, what I feel, is to be a mother and to be a wife and to build a home and life. And, so any decisions I make, I think long term, how is this going to affect my little family that I want to have? So anyway, so I started Diamox, and they started me on 1,000 milligrams, but you build up to it. And the side effects getting used to Diamox were rough. Very numb, very out of it, tingling everywhere. It's definitely intense. But if you can make it through and you hold through for at least, let's say 3 weeks, I think is how long it took for my body to get used to it, you'll be fine after. Like my stomach, I still always had stomach issues, and I got really nauseous on the tablets, and had terrible acid reflux. I never had acid reflux before I was on Diamox. But I have found, so there's tablets of Diamox and there's capsules. I'm not a medical professional, so please talk to your neurologist. This video is just for informational purposes. If you like what I say in something and think, wow, that's me and that may work for me, please talk to your doctors. Don't take what I say as like factual, hard facts. Like, obviously I'm just someone who has it, and this is my experience. But it's so great to have open communication with your doctors and neurologists, especially, to like let them know, hey, I've heard this works for other people. Can I maybe try this? So with that disclaimer, the tablets, like the powdery circle tablets, have way more consequences for me, stomach wise, nausea, acid reflux, and they are considered short-term, what is it called? So like the cap or the tablets are short-term release, or like they only work for like 8 hours out of the day, whereas the tablet or capsules are extended release, so they can last up to I think 12 or 18 hours, and they don't cause me heartburn, and I don't have as many side effects. So the only thing is the capsules come in 500 milligrams, so it depends on your dose. You can't like half it because it's a capsule, obviously. The tablets come in 250 milligrams. But you can obviously half those. So it depends on your diagnosis, or I'm sorry, it depends on your milligrams. So it's always good to ask your doctor if you want to try them, you know, because it's essentially the same medication, just extended release versus short-term release. And I feel like I'm not using the right verbiage with short-term, but hopefully you guys understand what I'm saying. So I recommend capsules to anyone who asks me what my experience has been. But I started out on 1,000 milligrams of the tablets that made me sick, and but I gradually went up to 1,000, and when I was at 1,000, I had panic attacks for like 3 or 4 nights in a row, and I called my neurologist, talked to them, and they told me to go back to 750 milligrams. So I stayed at 750 milligrams for a year, about a year, until here recently. And after I got the diagnosis, was put on Diamox, that was it. I was like, so you aren't going to run any tests to see, you know, what the cause could be? Like, and they're like, nope, just take the medicine. So the neurologist I was seeing was not really taking me serious in the fact that, like, I felt like he was just like, take this medicine, that's it. That's it. Like, what do you mean that's it? Like, you're talking about I may go blind one day, and it's just, that's it? You're not going to run any tests? And I didn't like their customer service, their office, so there was just a lot of reasons on why I chose to go to a new neurologist. So in January, February, I had my primary care doctor send a referral over to another neurology office that is highly recommended, but they don't have the best facilities, and they take a really long time to get into, but maybe that's why, is because they're the best. The other place that I went, the first neurologist's office, I mean, I got in immediately and had all my tests pretty much immediately, and now I know probably why, because they're not that good. But I'm thankful for them, because they are the ones that were able to get me diagnosed, and at least on medicine, you know, for the whole last year. So anyways, last month in March, I saw the new neurologist and said, you know, I had 28 opening pressure with my lumbar puncture, my spinal tap. I've been on Diamox, but the whole last year, I just constantly still had high pressure, headaches, like that whole, like just feeling like my head was full if I went like this. I can't do that a lot right now, but it just feels like splish splashy, like in my head, and I would have terrible migraines, just lived with migraines, and I'm still living with migraines, to be honest, 24/7. No matter what I do, no matter what I take, it just either goes down in migraine level, like pain, or it goes up, but it's always there, whether it's at a 1 or 2 on the pain scale. Migraines are always there. So I'm telling her this, and she puts me on 2 or 3 different migraine medicines, And then I got more, and over the last few months, I have been getting the trigger shot injections every few months, like every 2-3 months. Over the last year, I've went and got those trigger injections to help with migraines. So I've just had uncontrolled migraines for a year. And she was great. She's like, oh, well, let's get you in with another MRI. Let's get an MRV done, which an MRV is like an MRI, but it's where they can see the veins in your head. And so she was very active about like taking control of my pain and wanted to test more. And I was like so excited. But she had a different level of what she considers to be high, or, you know, like diagnosis level of IIH, which I've seen so many doctors in between the first neurologist and now this neurologist, and most of them you get kind of mixed emotions. A lot of people don't know about intracranial hypertension, my brain condition, but most of them are like a 28 is high for like cervical spinal fluid pressure in your head. But she was like, that's hardly even elevated. So I think she thought 25 was her level, and I'm just like, what? So anyways, so I went and got an MRI on Saturday. So now this is the last week. So that was my history. This is now the current last week. And I got an MRI, and after, she's like, when are you going to see your doctor next? I'm like, I don't know. I have another test to go to. And I'll also point out that, you know, with all the new testing that she was doing, and I was supposed to go see, and I'm still seeing an ophthalmologist or eye specialist again on Monday, she took me off of Dimax the last 3 weeks. Like, I've gradually been going down from 750 to 500 to every other day taking a pill to then now nothing. So she wanted to decrease me off of it, so when we did the extra testing, we would get the most accurate results and be able to see how high my pressure is or what's going on. So we gradually decreased the Dimax. So when I had my MRI on Saturday, I remember going in just feeling like crap. Like I was having terrible head pain. And constantly, it's only on my right side, which I think it's on my left too, but it's just my right side is prominent on where the fullness feels. It's just always like right here. Like if you were to cut my head in the middle, and all the space just feels so full and literally like my head's gonna explode, literally. And it's always hurting right here around this like just whole forehead, but mostly like these are sharp because they like trigger sharp pains right here above my eyebrows. And so I go and get the MRI. She's like, when are you gonna see your doctor? And it took an hour because I was in pain with my back laying. Like, MRIs are rough because you have to have your head in a cage, and then you're laying on a hard table, and my body spasms with pain from my back, which, again, I'm not going to talk all about my other diagnosis stuff. And so, because my body was spasming near the end, because I'd just been laying there too long for my back, I tried to stay still, but we just couldn't get it as good as we wanted, so we had to do it several times. I think she ended up getting a good picture, or a good MRI. So Saturday I had the MRI. Sunday rolls around. Monday, here's Monday, which was this week, 3 or 4 days ago, and I'm working. I woke up that day. I didn't feel too terrible, but didn't feel the best. Hold on, I'm actually gonna have to pause this, so hold on. Okay, sorry about that, and it may be a little bit of a different angle. I actually am starting with a new therapist, and I just had like a quick consultation with her to make sure she's going to be a right fit. She actually does chronic pain. Like, she sees chronic pain patients, so hopefully that'll work out. This will be my third therapist in a year, so hopefully we find one finally that'll work. So I was saying that on Monday I woke up, I wasn't feeling the best, but I was actually feeling okay, like okay enough to work. And so I was working, and then on my lunch, at the end of my lunch, I get a call, and it's my neurologist, and I'm in my neurologist like office, and I'm like, hello, and she's like, is this Hannah? And I'm like, yes. She's like, are you sitting down? Are you driving? Are you in a safe place? And I'm like, okay, I'm sitting down. She's like, well, I just wanted to call you because we got your MRI back and you need to go to the ER immediately. And I'm like, am I in a nightmare? Like, I am working right now. What do you mean? So I was literally like, well, I'm working. Like, can I go after? Or, like, is this an emergency? She's like, this is an emergency. And I'm like, what? And so she's like, yeah, it looks like you may be leaking cervical spinal fluid because you have extremely high pressure that we can see, extremely high fluid around your brain from your MRI results. And I was like, okay. So she's like, you need to go to the ER. You need to get a lumbar puncture, a spinal tap to remove the fluid, and so we can make sure you're not leaking. And I was like, okay. If I know anything now about hospitals, I always pack at least a one-night overnight bag. And so I throw all my medicines in a bag. I call my HR, let her know what's going on. I'm sitting there like, I'm about to lose my job. Like, this is crazy. And I, make sure everyone's updated who needs to be updated. Call my family, let them know what I just found out. We drive to, excuse me, sorry. We drive to Duke University Hospital, and I go in there, and they were so packed. Like, there was people in the halls. Like, it was so crazy. And my husband couldn't come in with me because of COVID. And I said, my neurologist called me and said that I had to come to the ER because apparently I may be leaking cervical spinal fluid. I don't know. I don't want to be here. I asked my neurologist if it was emergency. She said, yes, I had to come now, but I was working and I'm fine. I'm confused. I was just like shocked that like, I don't feel like I'm dying. So like, why am I here? It was crazy to me. So anyways, I'm going to post the videos, which I'm going to cover pretty much everything here, so you don't have to watch the videos, but I'm going to post them of, like, what I recorded while I was in the hospital. So at this point, I was just kind of, like, confused and freaking out and kind of, like, I don't know. I was just scared to death. And so they get me back. Oh, I wish I was better. I'm starting to kind of lose my focus. Come on, Hannah. Okay. So anyways, I was in the ER. My head's starting to get a little dizzy. Okay. I was in the ER, and after a couple hours, the triage nurse came and got me. And they took blood pressure, talked to me about why I'm here. A doctor came in, and the doctor, said that we need to do a lumbar puncture, spinal tap. And I was like, yeah, I know. My neurologist said that. They sent me back out in the waiting room. I ended up being in the ER for, I think, like the ER waiting room for 6 hours. I had terrible anxiety there, because there was people yelling. It was overcrowded. There was people taking their mask off, and it was just nuts. It was like what I would consider, like, I don't know. I don't even know what I'd consider it. It was just terrible. So I'm sitting there, like, with anxiety, and I was like, can y'all give me an Ativan? Like, can y'all, like, because when they took me back to get blood at one point and then sent me back to the waiting room, before they sent me back, I broke down and cried, and I was like, this is too much, because when we walked from the waiting room to the room to draw the blood, the hospital halls were lined with people in the bed, like in hospital beds, just like looking like they're all about to die and hanging over. And I'm just like, I don't know, it just freaked me out. It was like a nightmare, like, and I'm trying to not be dramatic, but it just felt like my type of nightmare. I'm like, I'm not in here. I was working. Like, what is going on? I was working today. Like, I'm supposed to be, like, working right now. Like, what is going on? It was rough. So then after 6 hours, they finally got me back in a stretcher, like in a bed, in a small ER type room, like emergency room. And, my husband finally was able to be with me now that I had a room. And then 17 hours go by, and at this point it's the next morning, and, you know, I thought I was going to go in there because my neurologist made it seem like this was emergency. I needed this right now. I thought I was going to go in there and get, like, a lumbar puncture, and then they would be like, oh, you're fine, go home. I had no idea this was going to turn into, like, a 3-day hospital stay and tons of stress and anxiety and emotions. And whew. Looking back now, going, like, thinking from the moment I got the call to when like, today, when after everything, I'm thankful it happened because I learned a lot. It was very eye-opening. We found out a lot about my brain condition as far as, like, my pressure, and we were able to run a lot of tests. So I'm thankful for it from start to finish, but the beginning was very rough, very rough. Excuse me. Okay. So anyways, I'm so sorry, y'all. I'm starting to get overwhelmed. I think it's so important to share this. So, finally, you know, they told me that they're going to have to take me from the ER to the 4th floor, which was, and this is Duke University Hospital, so it's huge. By the way, the ER at Duke University is crap, but, like, I guess they're doing the best with what they can, but some of the nurses there are rude in the ER, not like the neurology floor. Like, the ER, like, I don't know. I just don't even want to talk about my ER experience. I just don't. It was terrible. It was terrible. But I'll say that Duke is so busy because they're the best. Like, that's just the truth. Their facility sucks. The ER nurses sucked. But Duke is the best. They have the best doctors. It's the truth. It's the truth. And so, 16, 17 hours go by since all this started. They finally, on Tuesday in the afternoon, get me up to the neurology floor, and they run a CT scan, and they tell me I'm going to have a lumbar puncture later that day. Ended up not getting one that day. They had to do the lumbar puncture on Wednesday. So on Tuesday, we did the CT, and the results came back that I have a dip in my sinuses. It was a sinuses CT scan. And the reason I'm saying this is because that dip is what my neurologist saw and why they sent me to the ER. I get a lot of fluid out of my nose and my ears, but it's not constant. It's just like random times. Like, I'm trying to remember. I don't know. I'm so bad at like paying attention and recording in my mind, or even physically recording what happens, when, why, how often. I'm terrible. I gotta get better about this. So it showed a dip in my sinuses, and the reason that is so important and serious is because I may have been having an active cervical spinal leak. And the neurologist told me that if I'm having an active cervical spinal fluid leak from my brain, then that's very serious and we can't just leave it. I'd have to have brain surgery. And they were thinking when I first got in there that I was having this. And I'm like, oh God, oh God, oh God. So yeah, it was rough. And so the CT showed that dip, and that dip was either I was born with that, so it was a hereditary, or because of the high pressure I've maybe had, like the high brain pressure I've had for maybe 10 years at this point, it could have created the dip in my sinuses, which cervical spinal fluid collects there and then drips out. So, Wednesday comes around, and finally I'm getting my spinal tap. Now, this is the important information. Anyone who has to get a lumbar puncture or spinal tap, I don't care if it's for IIH or anything else, if you have a bad back, I have degenerated, herniating, bulging disc in my back, exactly in the area that they go to tap the spine, like to do the procedure. You need to ask them to do it by CT, because I told y'all earlier in this video, my first experience with the spinal tap was terrible. This one was not as bad. It did hurt. Now, it definitely hurt. He couldn't get in the first place that he went, the normal place that they go for the spinal tap, so he did have to end up going on the side of my back, and then to my buttocks, or butt, my bottom. And anytime I like felt pain at all, he shot it up with more numbness, and then it would go away, the pain, for that time being. But it was intense. I cried. I had an anxiety attack. They forgot to give me the Ativan that I had asked for before the procedure, because again, I'm a high anxiety person in general. So that part was rough. So, all right, all those emotions aside, 3 days in the hospital at this point, we're finally at the procedure. So he finally, after, like, the whole procedure took an hour and a half, and it normally does not take that long at all. It took that long because we had a really hard time getting in my back, because he said I have a narrow, place where he goes, because my back's bad. My back's really bad, so it's narrow. So anyways, he then checks the opening pressure, the fluid in the back, and if you remember earlier in the video, I said per him and most doctors, high pressure is anything over 20. He said that you want your cervical spinal fluid to be around 17 or 18 pressure level. When he did, and last year, my pressure in 2020 was 28. So just a reminder of what I said earlier in the video. When he went in this time, it was a 46. 46. He only drained me down to a 31, took 12 milliliters of spinal fluid. I kind of wish he would have taken more, but because we had to use a smaller needle due to how bad my back is, it was just dripping instead of flowing out like the normal needle would do. So we would have been there hours to get as much out as we needed to. He goes, so he opens it and he says right when he can see it's a 46, he's like, do you have a headache? I'm like, doctor, I always have a headache. I live with feeling like my head's gonna explode. So yes. And then when he did first puncture wherever it starts flowing out at, I felt really lightheaded. And he said that shouldn't be that way, but my mom said from last year, she remembers me saying the same thing. So I think for some reason I feel really lightheaded every time my spinal is tapped with this procedure. And he said, "Do you feel better?" I didn't. I felt crazy. Like, it kind of felt, I kept explaining my head is a fishbowl with like the waters at the top, and somebody's just going like this. Like, it's not on a table. It's somebody's holding the fishbowl, and it's at maximum capacity. So when he lowered it, it just felt like it was a little bit lower in the fishbowl of water, but it was still going like this. And I felt very like out of balance. So then I go back to the room. They send me home about, I think it was 6 or 7 p.m. on Wednesday. And I felt terrible. Like, I just was so overwhelmed, so just done with everything. Because again, I was fine on Monday. I did not go in there willingly. This was not something I chose at all. They told me I had to go in. Even when I was in the ER and I was waiting for 17 hours to go up to the neurology floor, I said, "Can I leave? Can I please leave?" I said, "I did not choose to be here." And they said, "If you leave, like, that's federally against," like, they were like, "This is literally against the law to let you go because you're being admitted." And I'm like, and I like called Wake Med, and I was like, because I had my emergency surgery. If you've been watching my videos, I had my emergency surgery last year for my gallbladder at Wake Med, so I'm just used to them. They're fast. They have amazing facilities. Duke, like, even the hospital room I was in on the neurology floor, the bathroom was tiny and everything was tiny and it was not up to date. But honestly, like, I would rather have a great doctor and be in a cardboard box than be in a hotel, like, nice room with a huge bathroom and nice shower, to be honest. Because when it comes to your health, like, I don't care. So I'm glad I didn't go to Wake Med. And after I found out that Wake Med, actually, the neurology would be the first guy that I was seeing a year ago that I'm not going to name. It would be the company, you know, the place he works for, the neurology office he works for. I'm like, So I'm so glad I stayed at Duke. So glad, because the neurology team there, my neurologists, like, I love them. I love them. And if y'all are watching for any I loved the guy who did my lumbar puncture. I loved most of my nurses. If any of y'all are watching, thank you. Thank you so, so much. Thank you. It is so important for people to be so kind and gentle, and I like direct. Tell me direct. Tell me direct. Oh, okay. So, off of that train, so we go home, and once we got home, I ate a little bit of something, went upstairs, went straight to bed, laid flat. I woke up yesterday on Thursday, and every time I got up, even to use the bathroom, I almost fell over. It was rough yesterday. Today I'm feeling a little better. As you can see, I'm sitting up. But even right now, like, I still get a little dizzy, and my back, it definitely feels like it's been punctured, but it's not as bad as it was last year after the procedure. So now Monday I have to follow up with the ophthalmologist, and I need to follow up with my neurologist here soon. So that's where we're going from there. But the results are that I do not have an active leak, obviously, because I would have had brain surgery if I did. And that my pressure is extremely high. So they put me back on Dimox, and I'm up to 1,000 milligrams right away. And they're probably going to increase it even further. I'm still on the 3 migraine medicines on top of Dimax. So now I take 4 medicines for migraines and my brain condition. Whew. And my vision is not affected at all. No PAPs. Thank you, Jesus. And I'm going to get established with the ophthalmologist on Monday in case my vision does black out and I have those periods again. I need to go see him immediately. But, I was looking in my support group I have, and everyone who had pressure as high as me, like all of them who wrote something about it, had vision loss. And I'm just like, how am I not having vision loss at this high of pressure? Like, blows my mind. But I'm not complaining. I'm so thankful. And, a lot of people see me as like a strong individual, but I'm not, like, all the time. And I think part of me was like, how have I been living with this high of pressure and this miserable, and I don't realize it? I don't think I know what normal and good feels like anymore. And that's really sad. It's really sad. So now I'm going through a process of trying to, like, accept and work through all of my emotions of this really traumatic experience I had the last few days, which turned out good. Learned a lot. But wow. So, they did also find on my MRI, on the MRV, that I have nerves in the back of my head that are compressed, which I think is optical neuralgia, but I don't know. I need to ask my neurologist about that. And then again, we found that dip where there's not an active leak, but apparently I may be someone who intermittently leaks cervical spinal fluid. And I have extremely high fluid in my brain, which causes pressure, so extremely high pressure. So, I think that I covered everything I wanted to. This is a really long video, but all of my experience I have with doctors, again, I like to be raw, real, and just sit down and talk about my experience, because it's so important to document it for anyone else who is going through the same thing. And I want to encourage anyone who has headaches or migraines. I watch this YouTuber, and she has had migraines for days, and she's just like, oh, I'm fine. I'm probably just getting off caffeine or sugar, but I always have migraines, but these are lasting longer. Don't just assume that's okay. Like, I think that we don't give ourselves enough credit. And another thing is, even though we feel like, oh, I don't want to bother doctors, what if it's nothing? What if it's something? So I want to encourage anyone who has migraines or headaches, please see a neurologist. And if your neurologist or primary doctor or doctors are not giving you the care you deserve, I'm going to say that a third time, you deserve the care you deserve and need, please see someone else. Sorry, my side of my nose is itching. Please be your own advocate. No one in this world knows how you feel but you. And if something doesn't feel right, that's not right. I'm sorry to put my finger on the camera, but I'm just so passionate about people getting the care they need. And I have been through so many doctors over the years. I literally have. And I've asked for second opinions. I've found doctors myself. I've had my amazing primary care doctor who has been the whole reason that I've even got care. I've had her refer me to doctors, her give me suggestions, any updates I send to her, and she's just amazing. But I'm getting off on another tangent there. You have to be your own advocate. You really do. Now, if you see 3 or 4 doctors, they're all saying the same thing, they're all like, okay, you know what, maybe you should reconsider and just accept it as what it is. But if you truly don't feel okay, stand up for yourself. Go to a doctor. If I would have just not mentioned the headaches to the ENT a year ago, I may be blind. And I may be blind one day, and it maybe wouldn't have been under control, and it's still not under control, but we're getting there. Another thing I'm learning I used to see me as, I'm so sick of being so young and so sick, and I won't lie and say that sometimes I still feel that way, that I don't think it's fair I'm so young at 29 and so sick. But I'm also thankful because everyone who does have chronic issues and pain, they have to go through years of testing and figuring out what works and finding the perfect regimen and treatment that helps them live their best life with what they can do, excuse me. So I'm thankful that I get to have my good years, even if it's only going to be 2 or 3, or even if it takes a couple more years, in total of 5 years, to find what works. So then later on in life, I'll be able to enjoy my life. So just remember that, again, it does take a long time to figure out what works and what's going on. And slowly but surely I'm getting there. And I just truly pray to God and hope that my job sticks with me and hangs with me until I get my good treatment, good regimen of medicines or a good regimen of coping mechanisms that work for me so that I can be my best self. And I am an optimistic person, and I know going through pain is rough and it's hard and it's not fair, but we got to hang in there. And however we have to hang in there, you do that. And you hang on even when it feels like there's not even a string long enough to hang on to emotionally. You got to hang on, because that's all we can do is hang on. So I hope this encourages some people. I hope this video was informational. I feel like I went way too in detail with how personal my experience was, and I should have just been factual at some points, but I just want people to always know they're not alone. And I hope that people take some of the things that have worked for me and ask your doctors about it, your neurologists. And most importantly, I hope people who have been dismissing their pain and what they are feeling, I hope you go to the doctor. I hope you don't just go to your primary doctor. I hope you ask to see a neurologist and have tests run and have MRIs done, bare minimum. Be your own advocate. So thank you for watching if you did. And if you want to stay in contact with me, or as far as watching my journey, please subscribe, because I do upload videos each time that I have an experience like this, because I again think it's so important to share it to the world. And if you have any questions, please leave me a comment. I do respond to almost all comments, if not all comments. And anytime anyone subscribes to me, it makes me the happiest person on the world, or in the world for that moment, because it's so sweet that there's strangers who don't know me that think I'm worth giving a subscription to, or, like subscribing to and enjoy my content in my life. As silly and superficial as that is, I'm so glad that I can touch some people's lives or make people smile or laugh. So I do upload reviews with my husband once a month, twice a month. I post makeup videos, vlogs, and these medical life updates. So thanks again for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Hope you have a great day. Bye.